Hey, witches! Welcome to week 8 of our journey through the tarot.
This week we study the Ace of Wands through the Ten of Wands.
The Wands numbered cards show how we initiate experiences.
Whether we're planning our future or battling with others, these cards are symbols of our daily activity.
So grab your tarot cards and your notebook and let's get started. Hello and good evening, everybody.
Hi, witches. How are you?
Just getting our screen all set up so we can see everybody and ourselves and make sure the card is right. Oh, it's still not on the right one. Go to that one. There we go. The Ace of Wands. We are starting with the Wands tonight. We are looking at cards Ace through 10. We're going to be talking about the symbology of these cards. So instead of giving you definitions for the cards, we're going to be giving you
which you can get anywhere.
Yeah, the symbols meanings. Like this is where you're really getting to discover how Pamela Coleman Smith represented the ideas that the cards mean based on the images that she put in the cards. So we just love that.
Yes.
This is my favorite part because this is like reading the secret messages within tarot.
Well, and I think sometimes they're harder to discern the meaning of them because there's not something like going on that's obvious. Some are very obvious. There's the Four of Wands where they're celebrating. The Four of Wands is celebrating. That's so obvious you barely need an explanation for that. But is it the 7 or the 8 where they're all flying through the air like arrows? That card always like, what does this mean? There's just a bunch of things like pointing. I don't even know what's happening.
Wands coming at your face.
They're just like they're at different lengths and stuff, and I'm like, and there's nothing in the background to give me any indication of what this means. But now I know that they've been like shot through an arrow.
Yeah,
and they're headed toward their destination or aiming at a goal. Aiming at a goal.
Yes.
They're aiming at a goal.
So we're gonna go through those sort of secret encoded messages to help give us. Do you want this guy? She's over here doing her finger on the mouse pad that is not the mouse, trying to make stuff work.
Listen, I'm a PC user, and I don't. So when it comes to Mac, hello from Iowa. Kim is in Iowa. Hello, Iowa.
That's where my husband's from.
Goodness, very nice to have you here, all the way down in Southwest Florida. Okay, we're gonna make that go away.
It's funny because like we're in your guys's houses, living rooms, bedrooms, wherever you're at, but you're also in ours. So welcome to Florida. It's still hot down here. We had like 3 days of cool weather, back to scorching.
It's still hot and buggy. So if you ever visit, bring lots of bug spray and Sugarex or something for the bug bites, because they will get you.
It's no joke.
Yeah, they will get you.
Yeah,
so
I don't even like using bug spray, but you kind of got to.
It's lovely to see you for week 8.
Yes. Heading into the real like in-depth stuff of
we're
the
in the meat of it now.
Yeah.
We're in the everyday activities that happen.
Mm-hmm.
These are the scenes depicted and the things that are going on in the Ace through 10s of the tarot cards are all the stuff that happens to us like daily in our lives. Most of the other cards were like, especially with the major arcana, those are things that are big events in our lives. These Ace through 10 of the minor arcana are all the little things that happen, the day-to-day crap that we deal with, or the day-to-day celebrations that we have, because it's not always crap. Sometimes it's really good stuff like celebrations and weddings and
well, and this is the Wands card. So this is where things happen. This is the suit of action and passion. So we're going to explore that further. What are the daily activities that we encounter that deal with action and passion?
And by the way, just as a reminder, the Wands is where shit gets started. Okay, so we need the spark. We need that. We need the spark of fire to get us going.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
For all the other suits to like line up and get in there and do their job and provide their elemental support, to balance everybody out. So without further ado, we'll start. Go.
Me? Okay.
Yeah.
We didn't do our little lines on the paper. That's my OCD is now kicking in. Looking at our notes. Damn it. With the Ace of Wands, we're looking at inspiration and the creative spark. The aces across all of the suits. So we are going to repeat this same thing 4 times. The aces represent new beginnings. So no matter which ace you get, it's going to be new beginnings. And each one of our numbered cards is going to have that thing. So we are going to repeat that thing for each one of them 4 times.
We're
But
going to
we've got-
remind you.
We're going to remind you what
that the ace is
aces-
always a new beginning.
new beginnings.
Yeah.
So what do we see in this card? In the original drawings, because if you look at different decks, it does get different, especially like the Radiant deck. It's much prettier, but it loses a little bit of Pamela Coleman Smith's original drawing. But in the original drawing for her, you see a glowing hand emerging from the clouds holding the wand. And the wand is the representation of fire. So imagine like spirit gifting you the spark of creation, of innovation, of inspiration. That is what the wand in the hand is really representing. The thing that we actually said was, this is like the hand of the universe or of God, whatever you want to believe in, that brings the inspiration for you. It's like the light bulb going off in your head. That's what this card is really representing. If you notice the little leaves that are coming off of the wand, they're just hanging out there on the side, kind of floating around. These are the sparks of creativity that are falling all around for you to do something with. They're wanting to light little fires wherever they can. When we put this together, this card means you're being gifted with inspiration. So it does take somebody paying attention, if you think about that, to what's going on around them to see the gift of inspiration.
That is so true, because I feel, at least I can say this in my own life, that so much of my time I spend in my own head. And so I'm like driving, walking. Today I walked like a mile over to pick up my car, drop my car off. I was in my head listening to music or listening to a video or thinking about staying out of the road so nobody would run over me, listening for traffic and stuff like that. So I really wasn't paying attention much to my surroundings. And I think we miss out when we fail to like just observe what's going on around us. So I think we can miss this little gift from the universe. It's like, hey, you, wake up over here. Yeah. Here's an idea for you.
There's little things to inspire
you.
I
think for me, I feel like that part of it is the paying attention part to getting out of our heads and looking around us and appreciating the things that we see, the people that are around us, that we encounter, the people in our lives. I just feel like that's really important for me, at least, to say, I think if nothing else, it's a lesson for me. I'm reminding myself to pay attention.
Yeah, that's getting out of your own head,
Yeah.
The wand suit is about the things that are going to happen outside of yourself. We're going to get into that headspace when we get into swords and cups. But right now we're looking at what's outside of ourselves. Over to you for the 2 of wands.
For the 2 of wands.
I have to do my job though. Oh, wait. Job done. Okay.
Okay.
Change
So another thing that we will repeat for the next 2-3 weeks through the rest of the tarot is that 2s represent partnership and duality. And this will be the same for all the 2s in the tarot.
Yes.
Now, what we see in the card, when we look at the card and we look at the symbolisms of the card, we see a miniature globe. And this represents potential for expansion. It's this little bitty globe, and we live in this big world. So there's lots of room to expand here. Also, we've got some color magic, if you will. I'm going to call it color magic. Color magic going on here. Yeah. We notice something very prominent in this picture. The man in the picture is wearing an orange tunic and a red hat. So the colors orange and red tell us that the enthusiasm for life, we have enthusiasm for life and with the orange. So that's like I guess, I'm not sure where that comes from, but anyway, enthusiasm for life. And then the red is the hunger for adventure, because this is the wand. So it's the doing. This is, like Jamie said, we're outside of ourselves at this point with the wands. Okay. Also note in the back. Oh, I'm sorry. He stands on on the parapet of a castle. I don't know if anybody's
I love
ever.
this word. It's a parapet. New word for me. The parapet of a castle.
That's Parapet for anybody who needs help with the spelling.
I
But
didn't
that's, where they're standing up on the castle wall. So he's standing on the
think-
parapet of a castle and
Mhm.
he's looking toward the future.
It's looking out into the world, which would be in front of him, representing the future.
So putting it all together, this card represents moving forward with enthusiasm for the plan that you've created.
It's being able to see that future, make a plan about it, and like the anticipation to go out and live it.
All right, over to you for the 3.
The Three of Wands. This card represents looking ahead. I know that the 2 and the 3, you'll find a lot of similarities in them because one is planning and looking ahead. And this one is you've planned from the 2 and you're looking ahead now, but you're in your plan already. If you look at how sorry, I'm jumping ahead. I'm going to keep in sequence. 3s represent creation and creativity. So we've done our plan. Now we're creating the steps. We're in it. Every step we do, we're processing through that. What's happening? The first thing to look at to acknowledge this is his wands are planted in the ground. So they are solid in the foundation of the doing. They're like, we're in this. They're not willy-nilly floating around. You can't see half of them. They are planted. They know what they want to do. So that's the commitment to the plan, the planted wand. That fire is like, I'm here. I'm doing it. Him looking out over the water, and it could be at sunset or sunrise. If you look at the colors, right? He's got golden sky, golden water. I interpret it either way. I'm not sure that it means more in one way or another, but it's just that this is the continuation of time because you're in between something. This is reflecting. So the sky reflecting on the water is reflecting on the plan. So you're matching like your desires in that water with the sky element of like what you're actually doing and planning and going about. So that's the reflection coming back to you. When we see those ships, right?
They're
those,
very
the
tiny.
little
Can you guys see the little
ships,
tiny ships on the
little
water?
ships. I
You have
mean,
to look very close. If you never noticed them before, you're like,
they're
oh my
little ships.
God,
Yeah.
there's little ships on the water, which means they're far off in the distance.
Right. Because you're in part of your plan now, right? And those lay in your future still. It's like where you're going to get to. Those are your ship coming in, right? You're waiting for the thing that you are trying to achieve. And so the ships coming in or the ships being on that water are our ideas taking off. That's a very hard sentence to say. They are our ideas. Yay. I get a gold star for that sentence. That felt difficult.
Okay, gold star after the meeting.
Okay, fine. When we put it all together for this card, we're looking at it's representing us looking ahead and seeing our plan coming to fruition. Like you can see the things that you want. They're in your view now. It's not just in your head. They're physical in the world. And we're keeping our eye open for other opportunities. Remember, as a fire card, this is all about the movement, spark of creation, passion. So those are also representing like, there might be more than just one thing coming your way because you've set all this in motion. We're going to go over to the Four of Wands.
Which I think is almost the easiest card in this whole, of all of these to understand, because you have people celebrating and it's just very, this is a very happy card. There's either a party, a wedding, whatever whatever the circumstances,
Yeah.
but it's definitely a celebration. So let's talk about what 4s represent. 4s represent stability and foundation. That's what the number 4 represents in the tarot. So all the 4s, you will see a similar theme.
If you want a way of remembering 4s, you guys, just because I'm a numerology person, understanding that 4s mean stability because 4 wheels on a car, right? Like
4 legs on a table.
You need all 4 for things to go well.
Yeah.
Even if you have a substitute
That's
wheel,
where
it's not great.
that's where you get the stability from, like the 4 legs on a table,
Mhm.
the 4 wheels on a car. Imagine if one of those was missing on the table, it'd be like
You'd know.
it would definitely be unstable. Okay, so we have, first of all, what we have in this card that we see, the prominent thing that we see in the card is the wands holding up a welcoming banner celebration.
Yeah, all that
Welcoming a
floral
celebration.
ribbons.
So all that floral. So we see the wands, they're providing this little pathway to this celebration. We also see people toasting. The two people, they're like, they could be holding, they appear to be holding up some kind of wreaths, but it could be anything, but they're definitely toasting. And then we also have the people in the background, far in the background, which represents our community. So the Four of Wands is about celebrating in community. That's the meaning, the meaning of the basic meaning of this card. And so that's where we see it. We see celebration and we see community with the wreath, the welcome wreath, and then the people in the front who are toasting. That's our celebration. The people in the back, that's our community. That's how we bring this together. So putting it all together, celebrating with a community that supports you.
I think adding that, celebrating with a community that supports you is where you really add in that element of the four, because you can have a community, but they're not always supportive. This does represent a community that backs you, that has your back, that supports you, that's going to celebrate with you and be there. And we're going to move on to, oh, I did it again. Moving on to the Five of Wands. Now we're seeing competition and rivalry in this card. It's not hard to tell that that's kind of what's going on, but there's something more to it, because when we have competition and rivalry, and we have the number 5, which 5s are going to represent change and conflict. So we can really see how this card mirrors that with being the 5. That conflict and change, Kat and I were discussing this. Doesn't conflict result in change, or doesn't change sometimes result in conflict? We're not here to say which one's coming first, but you know that these two things are paired when you come to the 5s. If we talk about what we see in the card, you've got 5 men on a hillside tussling or branding those wands, right? They're up in arms with them. This is the picture of a competition and rivalry in action. I mean, that's what they're portraying. She didn't find another way to say that in a sneaky way. It's like, boom, here it is. You've got conflict.
Whoop, there it is.
But the other thing that she put into the picture is that if you look at the ground, you notice that it's really uneven. You know, you can really see how the ground underneath of them is shifting. And that's a phrase that we say, right? You say it, you have a thing that's shifting ground.
Yeah.
She told me the thing.
The ground shifting underneath your feet.
There you go. People say that. It's like, it's a saying, but she's actually picturing that here, because that change or conflict is causing that shifting ground. That's, for symbology, that's really it. So when we put that together, it's just, you have conflict and change happening, and the change could be the reason for the conflict, or vice versa. Best thing to know about that card. Moving on to the 6 of Wands.
The 6 of Wands is about, I think this is a pretty easy card to interpret as well, because this is about victory and recognition.
Yeah.
6 is the number 6 in the tarot, or number 6, but the 6s in the tarot, they represent harmony and balance. So what do we see? What's the symbology in this card that we can connect victory and recognition to, and then harmony and balance? First of all, we see that there are people they're supporting him. These are his supporters, and they're giving him recognition. So I think we should have probably started with the man on the horse carrying the wreath. We've got the laurel wreaths, which are
they symbolize victory.
They symbolize victory, because they were given to the victors in medieval times or whatever.
I wish I could give you a time frame, but that was just something that signified a winner, was those laurel wreaths, and you'll find them throughout the tarot. This is not the only card that has them. So knowing that symbol, and which is why we really designed doing all the pip cards with symbols is because these symbols spread throughout the tarot. You learn them in one card, and you know when you see it in another card that it means victory, success, recognition, and the laurel wreaths all mean that. I mean, the world card is literally like a laurel wreath all the way around.
Yeah.
So that's how it
so he's
combines.
he's carrying one on his wand, but he's also wearing one on his head.
Mhm.
The other thing we see in this card is we look at the horse's face.
Look at that horse.
The horse appears to be showing admiration for the rider. Like
Yeah.
he's also recognizing this rider's his accomplishments.
Mhm.
So
He's I put it as like a face of admiration. The horse looks like a Disney character horse that's kind of like, oh, I love you. Like, oh, you're so great. I'm so glad I'm your horse. You know? He's like being recognized as well. He's like, look at us. We make such a great team. You know?
and they do. I mean, look at them. I want to be them. So putting it all together for this card, this is a card that represents a victory that brings harmony.
A victory that brings harmony.
So that's how we're tying
Yes.
harmony and balance into this card with the 6.
So again, these are actions within our lives. So when we accomplish things, imagine how our family feels about it. You know, I'm thinking back to, I went back to college at like 30, 32, something like that, late, because I was scared. I was like, I can't go to college with a bunch of young kids.
I
Like,
can
it's
top
gonna be
that,
terrible.
but okay,
Yeah,
tell your story.
I can top it. But, you know, I knew that when I graduated after 4 years, like, everybody was just there for me. Like my whole community of people, friends, you know, was like, we're so proud of you. You did it. I mean, I was proud of myself, but they really cheered me on in the last 6 months where you're just like crying and writing papers and staying up till 3 a.m. just like struggling. You're like, it'll be over soon. The people had my back. And so at the graduation, so many people showed up that I just didn't even expect to come out of the woodworks and be like, you did such a good job. We're so proud of you. And I was like, wow, I didn't even know you were kind of following that story of mine. Like, I thought I was struggling all alone. So that's sort of how I think of it, is like your community is coming to support you after something that you've done, and it brings everybody together. So it creates that harmony. They're all celebrating the same thing. Lovely. Okay, we are moving on to the 7 of Wands. So the 7 of Wands, you can kind of see it, but it's self-defense. But it's not possibly the kind of self-defense you're thinking of, right? This is one of the weird wand cards. In 7, for numerology, this card represents spirituality and intuition. So all of the 7s are going to be about our spirituality and our intuition. So we have a conflicting issue here. The wands are about this outward motion of action and passion, but this card, because it's a 7, is going to talk about our internal state. And do we take action and passion because we have good things going on in our head or in our heart, or do we have like fear? What are we led by? So just starting with that basis, we have the giant man in the picture, and we're calling him that because if you look at how the ground and the cliff, he looks, and even the little river, he looks giant compared to the landscape. This lets you know he has main character vibes. I asked my mom if she's heard that recently.
I hadn't
like,
heard main character vibe, but I get it when you describe
Yeah.
it. It's like, I'm the main character
I'm the
here.
main
Pay
character.
attention to me.
It's like, it's all about him. The focus
Ego.
is about
Hello.
him.
We didn't talk about
Well,
ego, but
Yeah, and that's a different side of wands, where you're led by your own passions and desires, right? It's not for the good of everybody. It's not looking at a community. It's like, whatever I have inside of here is what's leading me or driving me. So because he's got this main character vibe going on, this is only his side. That's why I believe the wands are hidden and there's no other people in it, because the fight might all be in his head, but I'm getting to that. His defensive stance, the way he's got his wand, he is trying to do a battle with something or someone. Those wands aren't even up there trying to battle him, are they? They're just present. They're just there. So think about the shift in our mind frame that we need. His shoes. Can we please pay attention to his shoes? He has one very small shoe and he has one like boot. Okay. He was in such a rush, or he was so not together. Maybe it's his ADHD, that he put on 2 different shoes and ran out there to fight off things that he thought he needed to fight. However you want to perceive that, is not being ready, not being all together. You know, he seems rushed and getting dressed to go out there and do something. So when we put these things together, his shoes, the wands being cut off, his defensive stance, he's the main character, the fact that this is a spirituality and intuition card, we have a person's internal battles, okay, all the things they got going on in here, defending their belief. And that's very broad because we're not going to say what the belief is, but he's defending something that he believes in the outside world. He feels like he needs to defend that. He could be battling himself. He could be battling other characters in his life, but that is what this card centers on, is the internal battles of somebody. Moving on to the Eight of Wands, the one Kat was talking about at the beginning of this.
The one that I always thought was like, what is that? So something to know this. So this card is about movement, which I think when we realize that these cards are actually or these wands rather, are actually in flight, like they've been like shot from an arrow of some sort or thrown by 8 different people or whatever.
They've been shot from a bow, not from an arrow, but
thank
yes,
you.
they are the arrow.
They're like the arrow. They're like an arrow flying through the air, right? So 8s are about movement, and you'll see this in the other 8s of the card. This is 8s are about movement, and the number 8 itself represents abundance. So what we see in this card is that wands appear to fly through the air like arrows, and this is representing our actions that are aimed at what we want. That's what. So these arrows are headed to a goal, like a target that we've set for ourselves in the future, in the present, or however we would say that.
However you want to interpret the goal that you're aiming for, whether it feels very close or very far away. These represent the aim towards our goals, which brings us abundance.
Okay, so what we have also is like, we don't know what the target is. It's not pictured. So that is our abundance, because it could be many, many things that we're aiming at. When
you're reading for people, this is when it becomes important. Like, you can look around at the other cards, and now you can say, if this feels like it's a relationship, maybe you're aiming for happiness or you're aiming for a breakup. But this is where the card is so open-ended that when you put other cards next to it, you can really start to feel an answer. You're like, well, this card is aiming, then put a little plus sign between the cards. This card is, the world. So you're trying to find like the thing, the place that you fit in. So whatever the card is next to it can help you identify what their goal is.
So when we put all the symbology together, what we get from this card is it representing us moving toward our goals, which will end with abundance. Because when we reach our goals, we obviously have gained something.
And abundance looks different for everybody. Some people want millions of dollars. Some people just want like a new car in their driveway. Other people just want their rent paid for the month. So
some people just want a home and food on the table.
Home, food. I mean, it's the survival. So this, again, wands represent action and passion. So whatever we're passionate about during that time, it also brings with it that characteristic. Moving on to the 9 of Wands. Love this guy. I don't know. His face looks so grumpy and his little bandaged head. He's such a cartoon character to me. But so with the 9 of Wands, this card represents perseverance, and you can kind of see it in his face. He's like, yeah, if you're coming back, I got you. I'm ready. I'm here. So he's persevering through something. The 9s in tarot represent insight when in solitude. This is really important because the 9 and 10 is going to they're going to feel similar because they're sort of both endings in a way. But the 9 is when you've come to conclusions because you're able to be alone in your thoughts. That's all the 9s.
That's shadow work.
It is shadow work. It's the reflection over all of the lessons that you've learned. So the aloneness in these cards is important as well. So this is reflections while alone. Or what we wrote was insight in solitude. All right, what do we see in the card that helps us understand this message? The battered man, okay, is bandaged up, not looking happy face. He's been through battle, but he is still holding his wand with 2 hands sort of at the ready. He's kind of like, I'm not dropping my weapon. If you're coming back, even though I'm hurt, I'm here. Then you have the 8 wands that are behind him. And there's sort of 2 ways to interpret this, I think. we found there was a saying that we found, and we were like, ooh, we really like that one.
Hmm.
So the 8 wands being taller than him, they do perform that protective boundary, right? And so when we put it all together, there is this saying that I just love. We are honoring our boundaries. So I just want to make sure that that comes out first. I'm going to say the whole sentence, but we're honoring the boundaries we put in place. Okay, love that. I had never heard the card put quite that way. So when we put this card together with the battered man and having his wall or his fence up of wands, one battle has ended, but with perseverance, right? He's still there. We stand ready for the next fight while we honor our own boundaries.
There's a lot of symbolism in this card, I feel like, with the wands behind him.
Yeah, think about like an actual situation in your life where this brings me back to having family members, my son's family members specifically, that, in order to have a healthy relationship with them, I really did have to keep them on the out. At one time when I was deployed overseas, they tried to file a judgment against me in court for abandonment of my child. I was like, I'm literally in Iraq. How have I abandoned him? Like, what? So that healthy boundary of just understanding what people maybe want from you and what you need to fight for or keep control of, that's just one of the situations for me that come to mind, is like, even when it's family, even when that's my son's blood family, they wanted to take him from me because they judged me incapable because I was in Iraq and I paid all the bills for everything, but it didn't matter. I wasn't physically there and they were ready to take him. I'm like, that doesn't even make sense.
That's a judgment
Doesn't
of a
make
mother.
sense,
No father would ever be judged that way, but a mother will be judged that way. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Because there's a double standard. Let's just admit that. So
what's
that's bullshit.
The thing of that is I'm in Iraq and I'm learning this. And of course they can't go through it because they start to realize when they talk to people how absolutely ridiculous they're being. When I get back, what do? This is where I have to all right, I've kind of battled them. And now I have to have these healthy boundaries in place where I don't let my child stay with them for too long. Or, I'm like, I have to keep up some kind of defense, even though I'm still willing to communicate with them. And I still want my son to have a relationship with, his grandparents or whoever. But that's that healthy boundary we got to honor, because somebody has crossed that line. And you're like, all right, now I know what needs to be in place. That's how I think of this. So the ended part of the 9, because the 9 is an ending in numerology, but it's an ending of you learned lessons and you're no longer gonna let somebody take advantage, gonna let somebody cross your line, because you learn it once and then that's it. Usually you don't have to learn it 3 and 4 times. But that's where I really get that healthy boundaries and honoring them. Just love that. It's my new favorite card right now.
I do love it. I think there's great symbology in it.
There
And
is.
when you really look at the deeper meaning of it, you're like, oh, wow.
Yeah. How does that relate to your life?
Yeah.
Who did you have to set healthy boundaries with? Even if you battled them and you want to love them like family members, because I think that that's probably the hardest of people to battle with is family, because you don't want to lose them. You're like, why can't this work? Like, we should love each other. Why is this so hard? Healthy boundaries help, stop things from happening. All right. With that, we are moving on to our last card, which is the 10 of Wands.
So in this card, the 10 of Wands is about a burden of responsibility. And 10s represent the completion of a cycle. And we will see this throughout the rest of the court cards, or rather minor arcana, ace through numbered cards. We'll see completion of a cycle in a suit.
So completion of a cycle in a suit just means that you've gone through all of the wand lessons or all of the sword lessons, but it's the completion of that suit. So it's like all the lessons are gathered together in this one card, sort of.
So what do we see to support that this is a burden of responsibility and at the end of a cycle? We see a man burdened with 10 bundled wands. This is him carrying all the lessons of the wands that he has learned, which creates his burden of responsibility, his responsibility to act accordingly, in accordance with the lessons that he's learned in the previous cards.
So that was like a lot to say all at once.
It was.
It's a lot. Even when we wrote it, we're like, how do we say this more concisely? So we'll break it down a little bit smaller, but you can feel the burdenness of him carrying the wands, right? Because his head is down. He's sort of like huffing it out, bent over. It doesn't look easy. So that burden is in the responsibility, because we talked about the Spider-Man quote, with great knowledge comes great responsibility, or, with great power comes great responsibility. And I think they're synonymous, because knowledge is our power, right? The more we learn, the more we know, the more we have the power to act. So when you think about that, he's carrying all these lessons he's learned, and now he has to go out into the world with them as a learned person with all the knowledge. He has to act accordingly, right? If he's a good and upstanding person, or however you want to label that, like when we become spiritually attuned, our responsibility is then to carry that forward into the world and hopefully bring light and love and happiness and whatever else you want to bring into the world. And,
And I'm just here to tell you that really does happen after you
go out into the world positively, like it reflects back on you in that way.
It does.
So the 10 reflects that, right? Where we see him headed off into this town where he's going to now act in accordance with all these lessons he's learned.
And interestingly enough, that city, it represents the start of a new journey, because he's taken all those lessons with him. He's going to this new town, and then he'll start another lesson.
He'll start over, but with more knowledge.
So even though these are heavy, they appear to be heavy. He appears to be weighed down with them. They're not falling all over the place. He's got them bundled nice and neat. And so these are the lessons of the previous cards. And he's going to go to this city, and then he's going to start a new journey to learn more lessons and become more elevated than he is now with the lessons of the wands.
We're not doing reversals in this at all, but because the reversal of this card is really short and easy, I do want to tell you guys, like, if you want to know how to say the positive side of this card, or the upright side, like we're talking about right now, the way that the opposite of this would roll is ignorance is bliss, right? Because that's the opposite of the responsibility of knowledge and knowing what you should be doing. When we're ignorant to the world, we make lots of mistakes, and you don't even know you're making them, and because you don't have the lessons behind you. So that 10 represents the opposite of ignorance is bliss. And then the actions that we take, how different we are when you're a 14-year-old kid going out into the world, or having your first date when you're a 40-year-old person doing the same thing. You have so much behind you, like you just know more. That's what the wands, and it's about holding the knowledge, but it's about how we act outside of ourselves with the world, because now we have the knowledge.
Okay.
Yes.
Now we have your homework for you. Are you ready for this?
Homework.
Okay. So this is your homework. So you're going to take Ace or 10 of Wands. You're going to lay them out in front of you. And you're going to think of them as the frames of a movie in sequence. So you look at them in sequence and think of them as frames in a movie. So in this scene, this happens. The next thing, this happens. What story can you tell about these cards without, you don't have to know any meaning of them. You don't have to look at your results, at your lessons or anything, or look up any meanings of them, but look at the cards and just see, like, what story can you tell when you look at these 10 cards? That's your homework.
Yes. And we've decided that is what we're going to do on our live this week.
We are. So we're going to do our own version of the homework.
We're going to tell the stories.
We're going to tell the story that we've designed, I guess, like interpreted. We've interpreted from the cards. And remember, all the cards there are many interpretations of them. And a lot of it depends on what other cards, what's the reading about, what are the other cards around it. So we can look at one single card and say, this card is about the lessons that we've learned and going on to the next step, because it's a 10. We've learned those lessons. We're ready for the next set of lessons, if you will. They're the next starting point, if you will. It's easy to look at one card. I think it's harder to look at a group of cards and be like, okay, so that's a lesson. And so anyway, I think telling the story is helpful. So you can just sort of get in it. And when you're doing readings, if you can remember what was the card that was before
Yeah.
this card, whichever
is-
card that is, if especially with the numbered cards, ace through 10. If you can remember what happened before that, it may help you interpret what's going on in the card that you're reading. So that's it.
I definitely agree with that statement. Sometimes to understand the card that I have in front of me, I was like, what happened to them just before this? What did they go through? Oh, yeah, okay, that's why they're recovering right now. Oh, that's why they're sort of like testing out this new thing. Oh, that's why they're celebrating. They've
Mhm.
completed their plan. They're like, oh, they're happy. So I do find that part really, really helpful in knowing the cards sequentially as a story, just because I feel like it helps me give the card I'm reading for more depth.
Well, and I do believe that when Pamela Coleman Smith created these cards, she was definitely telling a story. It's up to us to interpret what that
Yeah.
story is.
Yeah.
And the story is going to, again, be impacted by all the other cards that come with the reading. And we have so many ways that, we got 78 cards and you shuffle them, and every single time you're going to get something different. So it's been like, what's the reading about? What do you want to know about? Love, career, I don't know. What are some other really popular things? Love and career. are probably
Love and
two.
career are the biggest.
Yeah,
Love is the
probably
biggest.
Probably love is the biggest.
Love's the
Relationships
biggest.
are always the biggest.
Then jobs.
So if you're if you're trying to learn to read tarot, you can probably practice thinking about somebody asking you a question about, is this relationship? Is he for me? Is she for me? Is this going to work? Can I make it work? Should I make it work?
Yeah.
I know the times that I've gone to a tarot reader, it was about some guy, and I'm like, this just is I just need some guidance here because I'm like struggling so hard. It's like, honey, you already know the answer.
That is
You just don't want to admit what the
somebody
answer.
else to admit it to.
You
her.
just don't want to admit it to yourself, but
Yeah.
you already know. And here the cards say,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Very
anyway,
interesting.
all right. Thank you for joining us for week 8 of our journey through the tarot, where we studied the meanings of the numbered cards of the suit of wands, ace of wands through 10 of wands.
In these cards, we saw planning, celebrating, defending, and struggling with too many responsibilities, among other daily activities.
Learning tarot takes study and practice, so be sure to do the homework, which you'll find at the end of this video.